So with the trunk seal all sorted, it's now time to move on to the door jambs. I can do this after work in the evening using minimal power tools so I don't annoy everybody and keep the neighbors up. This is prepping it for spraying up the door jambs first before doing the rest of the body of the car, so I can actually spray the whole car in one piece. So let's get started, hey? So for this, we're using 240 grit sandpaper that's been soaking. Helps the paper last a little bit longer, which is always good. A nice soft backed Durablock pad, hard on one side, soft on the other, which is really helpful, and a trusty Scotch-Brite, some soapy water, and some cloths. So I'm just going to start on these little stone chips that are kind of random all over this door jamb, and really just get started, just knocking them down. I'm not going to be too fussed if they're not dead flat, because like I said, I'll use a little bit of spray filler just over the top to skim coat it. I don't need this looking perfect, but that would be nice if I do a half the right job on it. There's a couple of little screw holes here that, as the panel's been screwed in to be held in place, it's lifted the steel up a bit. So I've just got a little pointed hammer here. I'm just going to knock them in just to make sanding and spraying a lot easier. Alright, so looking good so far. We've got all the little teeny tiny dents out just by sanding it back. Nice and smooth, ready for a primer, I guess. Let's continue on with the inside door jamb between the two doors. Alright, so that's all been sanded down nicely now. All the inners are all done. Everything's nice and smooth and ready for some primer, I think. Just before I do the primer though, I do have to put a little bit of skim filler just over this area. This is where I sanded back some surface rust, rust converted it, and I just need to put a little bit of filler in there just to keep that nice and uniform with the rest of the car. So I'm going to get that done real quick, sand it back, and then we're ready for primer. So we're going to need a very small amount for this. We'll just skim it over to make sure it's covered. And that's it. We'll work with that. It'll be fine. This has come up really smooth now, so pretty happy with that job. I'm now ready to wax and grease the door jamb and then hit it with some surface primer. Edge primer is what I'm going to use. It's perfect for any kind of exposed steel that I've sanded through on. And hopefully that's the last step before we are ready for paint on the door jambs at least. Alright, so most of this is coming up pretty good so far. I've done a light coat of primer, but some of the issues you run into with, doing this kind of job is the etch primer that I'm using is starting to actually react with some of the old paint that's on this old car. Part of that reason could be that I am using etch primer on paint. That actually could be causing this to bubble up. Etch primer is a lot more acidic than normal primer, which is why it's designed to kind of bite into the steel and create a very, very good bond. But it doesn't seem to be liking whatever this original underbody paint is on this car. So I'm gonna have to stop and re-sand this back down and try it with a different primer. Ideally, I'll give it a go without etch primer. I'll just go normal surface primer. So that's a bit of a pain. Another half-hour work headed my way. But above all, it's nice and smooth, which is what I'm aiming for. There's no little cracks or chips or anything like that. Ignoring all that peeling, it would have been really smooth. So I'm going to wait for this to dry. I'll probably hit it with the heat gun just to speed things up. Down here, it hasn't reacted at all. A little bit there, I wonder what it is. It must have had a layer of something put over it at some stage, which just is not agreeing with this paint, because that's absolutely fine. All this is absolutely fine, and that's the same process that I've used on this wheel arch, but for some reason, this area is just peeled right up on me. So let's get that sorted before I go any further and waste any more time. So after a really, really good cleanup, another really good hit with degreaser, and a second good coat, this whole center area has come up really good. The upper rail is perfect right down to about there, but I'm still having issues with this peeling and reacting with whatever paint is on this lower part. So I got to sand all this back down again. So this has left me with one option. That's to sand it back down to steel. We're going to use these strip discs with like a kind of like a sandpaper grit throughout some polycarbonate mesh. It strips down the paint instantly and leaves the steel in very good condition. So we're going to get all this off just in the areas that need it. So this round arch, this inner bit, there's a few spots there and there that need to come off. We're just going to get that down to steel and then hit it with etch primer, and there will be no issues with anything reacting because there won't be any old paint left on the car. Alrighty, so we have sanded back with the strip disc all that cruddy paint, and it is now beautiful flat flush steel. I'm going to sand back any of the edges that I can't quite reach with that tool with a wire brush or something just to clean it up, but that's actually going to be far quicker and easier than doing what I was doing previously, which you saw in the whole video of sandpapering it by hand. I'm just going to hit it with the strip disc and get the job done. That way surface primer can go straight on top, etch primer can go straight on top of the steel. And that's it. We're then ready for paint after that. So all the rest that I have to do, I'm going to save my time and just use the strip disc. Well, instead of whinging, I'm going to continue on and get the rest of this finished. And there you have it. Back to steel, an etch primer directly onto it. We're done. That is a million times better, even than doing a really, really good sand job. That has come up so much better. So 100% I'm going to do the rest of the door jambs with the stripper and continue on. Well, I'm glad we finally made it to the end of this quick video, because that was a real pain in the butt. You got to come with me on one door jamb to do. I'm not going to take you on the journey for the other 3, because that would just be really, really boring. And you kind of get the gist of what I'm doing anyway, so. Till the next one, I'm going to call that a wrap. That's come up really good. I'm really happy with it. Look how nice that looks. That is like literally ready for paint. I'm stoked. See you in the next one.